Hey Carly, hope you're having fun on your on your trip. This is our lesson for today, Monday, and I'm just going to run through some stuff just so that you can keep up with what we're doing. So today we're learning how to add and subtract decimals to the hundredths. Okay, so probably take me about 10 minutes or more in order to do this. So just hang tight, make sure you watch the whole thing, hun. And I'm going to just show you some examples. But first, we're going to talk about how exactly do we add and subtract decimals. Okay, so when we add or subtract decimals, the first thing that we need to do is make sure that our problem is set up correctly. So step one, for an example, if I was trying to add 24 and 5/10 plus 13 and 83 hundredths, the first thing I have to do is make sure I line up the decimals by position and points. And now I talked about this on Friday when we had our virtual class meeting. So you might remember this. So we line up our decimal points. So it's 24 decimal point 5 and 13 decimal point 8300. So our decimal points are lined up. And when I do that, the digits that are in my ones are lined up. The digits that were in my tens are lined up. The digits in my tenths are lined up. And my digits in the hundredths are lined up. Although there's a 3 in the one spot and a space in the other spot. So we'll talk about that here in step 3. Okay, so once we have them lined up, then we're going to bring down the decimal point into the answer. So we're going to have our decimal point directly below where it is. It just drops straight down. Once we have our decimal point down there, we're going to make equivalent decimals with zeros so that the decimals have the same number of positions. And this is called annexing a zero. So before, there was nothing above the 3, but now we've annexed or added on a 0 above that 3. And once we have all those spaces filled out, and I noticed I had a typo here, that's a plus sign. Once I have all those empty spaces filled in, now I can do the addition. So it was, I'll just do it back here in the second one, so it's because it's already stood up. So I add my hundredths digits, I add my tenths digits, and I get 13, so I regroup the 1, bring down my decimal point here in my answer. 4 plus 3 plus 1 is 8, and then I have, oops, sorry, typo there, and then I have 2 plus 1, which will be 3. So my final answer is 38 and 33 hundredths. Okay, let's look at some other examples. So right here I'm using base 10 blocks. So in my top picture, I have one whole thing and I have 1/10 rod and I have 5 hundredths. So I have 1 and 15 hundredths. So if I put those two together, that's a total of 15 hundredths. And in my second picture, I have 2 whole things and then I have 2 tenths and I have 3 hundredths. So I have 2 and 23 hundredths. So everything's lined up perfectly there. So I'm going to add my hundredths, 8. I'm going to add my tenths at 3, decimal point in my answer, and then add my ones at 3. So I have 3 and 38 hundredths. So if I bring this down there, yep, I have 3 whole things. If I bring the tenths down there, yep, I have 3 tenths. Kind of move all that together. And then if I put these guys together, I have 8 of those. So 3 and 38 hundredths. Okay, without the pictures, here's a word problem. Nina buys a drink for $1.25 and a hot dog for $3.17. How much money does she have all together? So all together means we're going to add. Because this is addition, it doesn't matter which one I put on top. I just have to make sure that my decimal points are lined up. So it's going to be $3.17. And once I have everything lined up, I'm going to solve 12, 4, decimal point in my answer, and 4. So Nina spends 4, and I need to have my label of dollars, $4.42. Okay, so Mrs. Holtree has 2 sacks of potatoes. The first sack weighs 11 and 39 hundredths pounds. So we have 11 and 39 hundredths pounds. The second sack weighs 14 and 27 hundredths pounds. How many pounds of potatoes does she have in all? So in all means we're going to add. Because it's addition, it doesn't matter which one's on top. We just need to have those decimal points lined up. So the 14 is going to go under the 11, decimal point 27. And then we're going to add. And then we need to make sure that we have our label. So Mrs. Holtree has 25 and 66 hundredths pounds of potatoes. Okay, so our next one is going to be a little bit more challenging. Jordan is 48 and 24/100 inches tall. Blake is 4 inches taller. Okay, how tall is Blake? So Jordan is 48 and 24/100 inches. Blake is 4 inches taller. So we have to add 4 inches to Jordan's height to get Blake's height. Now this 4 is a whole number, and because it's a whole number, that 4 is in the ones place, which means that there's an invisible decimal point here to the right. There's always an invisible decimal point to the right of the ones. So that 4 has to line up with the ones. So when I look at 48, the 8 is in the 1, so the 4 inches has to be there. Make a decimal point and put a 0 under the tenths and under the hundredths. Annex those 2 zeros in there to fill in those empty spaces. So now we have 48 plus 4, so 48 inches plus 4 inches, and then we have our decimal part of 24/100 plus 0 for that inches for the bottom part. So we have 4, 2, decimal point, 12, and 5. So Blake is 52 and 24/100 inches tall. Let's look at 2 more examples. Okay, Gavin's family is traveling to Florida. Yesterday they traveled 238 miles, and today they traveled 313 and 89/100 miles. How far have they traveled? So we're finding the total distance that they've traveled. So I have 238 miles. That's a whole number, so we know there's an invisible decimal point here. Let's make it visible. And then 313 and 89/100. So 313, the whole number, has to go underneath 238 and then 89/100. Then I'm going to have to annex 2 zeros here at the end to fill in those spaces. And now everything's lined up, and I can add 8 plus 3 is 11. 3 plus 1 plus 1 is 5. 3, 4, yep. And 2 plus 3 is 5. So our final answer is 551 and 89/100 miles. Okay, one more question here. This is kind of a true or false or a yes or no question. So Colin added 3 and 8/10 plus 4 and 6/10, and he got an answer of 84. Is he correct? And how do you know? So I'll give you a second to think about that. Okay, so the answer here is that Colin is not correct. Colin is wrong. And the reason that Colin is wrong is because when you add this, yes, you get an 8 and a 4. However, there's a decimal point. So the correct answer is 8 and 4/10. He did good math of adding his digits. However, if you forget the decimal point when you're adding decimals, you actually have the wrong answer. So 84 is wrong, but 8 and 4/10 is totally correct. Okay, Carly, this is all I want you to do today is watch this. Tomorrow there will be an assignment some assignments posted to you for you to do to practice adding decimals. If you want to get onto H1 in IXL and do a little bit of that ahead of time to kind of get a little practice today, that's totally fine. Like I said, hope you're having fun.